Steve, would you go down and tell Alex is going to say a few words. Steve helped me set all this up. He's a curator for and there must be thousands of exhibits we have. He handles all of those, putting them in a different place for all the different shows that come on. I'm a Carolina volunteer. I have been a volunteer since 2011. It's a great place. How many of you have been to Carolina?
He was waiting.
So most of you know Carolina, great place. This is Alex Heckman, and he's going to introduce you a little bit.
So, it's wonderful to have all of you folks here. So many of the stories that we share about how Dayton, Ohio is a unique city. Any city has its history. Any history nerd at a history museum can tell you how their city is so great. But in my unbiased opinion, Dayton, Ohio really has some amazing stories to tell. Of course, we know the airplane was invented here, the cash register was invented here, the self-starter for the car invented here, and dozens of other inventions. But one of the great things, I think, is that it's a story in Dayton where success breeds success. And so you have this large national cash register company that then the employees from that company form the nucleus of Delco, and of course Delco gets absorbed by General Motors, as all of you people know very well. But then it turns into a situation where we have more General Motors employment in Dayton than any other city outside of Detroit. So before it was a pejorative, Dayton was the little Detroit. And so many different aspects to that history. And have all of you at some point seen our General Motors history exhibit downstairs? Okay, and one of you actually helped put that together here. So anyway, it's really a great piece of the story. And I just wanted to say hello to you, welcome you here, and hope that you do stay keyed into all the wonderful events and programs that we offer throughout the year. So we're coming up on a season where we'll have the campus open for 35 nights in a row for the program called A Carol on Christmas. And so if you have family in town or friends in town visiting you for the holidays, this is a great place to bring them to, And have all of you done that at some point before? No. Okay. Well, a lot of you have. But if you haven't, it's a great thing to do. If you've never had the opportunity to ride our large-scale 3-foot gauge railroad, a mile-long trip around the park, that's a great thing to do as well. So sometimes I think people get in their minds, oh yeah, I've been to Carolina Park. When they really think about it, well, the last time they were here it might have been 10 years ago or 15 years ago, or hopefully not like on a 4th grade field trip 40 years ago. That happens to us too. But in any event, it's a really dynamic, growing place, and so it's just great to have all of you here. I will tell you one other thing. Right now, we're working on a new project. We're constantly growing and expanding what we're doing. And some of you may have seen there was a front page story in the Dayton Daily News about how we received a grant from the James M. Cox Foundation, and that was kind of the final bit of funding that we needed to build a new museum addition into our what we call the industrial block outside by the print shop. And so it's going to tell some really neat stories about like the life and times of former Ohio Governor James Cox. It's going to tell a lot of like ripped from the headlines type of stories, crime and punishment and legal history, those types of things. So that's underway right now. They're putting up the concrete block, the footers have been poured, so that should be ready to go by the end of next year in 26. So I'm happy to take any questions from anyone before we turn it over to the person you really were here to see. If anybody has questions or comments at all.
Well, Frank's going to introduce me to him, so.
Well, before Frank does, let me just say on a personal level that one of the joys of working in Dayton history has been, we're a really nimble organization. We only have about 22 full-time equivalent positions. So the bulk of what we do, the bulk of the hours that are contributed in any given year in terms of manpower hours, about 80% of those hours are volunteer hours. And so one of the real joys of the job here over the years has been working with all these amazing volunteers. And the person you're going to hear from today, Chuck Johnson, got involved with us after he had been doing those invention tours at Riverscape Metro Park many, many moons ago. And Metro Parks had discontinued that, and so they transferred the assets from that to Dayton History. And fortunately, Chuck decided that he wanted to keep.
Did you say fortunately or?
I said fortunately. But fortunately, he came over, and so anyway, I think he's really a living link to the history of our community. And again, people can stand here and tell you about the history, but to talk to someone who's actually known Charles Kettering and worked for Charles Kettering, albeit as a young man, he's had some great stories to share, and he's been involved here for many years. So anyway, thank you again for being here. If at any point I can answer your questions.
Yeah, we're really fortunate to have Chuck here. When I asked him for a little bit of information about himself, he gave me this. So, not too bad for just the start of your career, but I just picked out some things like interesting things. 1957 to 1963, he worked at the C.F. Kettering Research Lab as a senior research associate, which I think propelled him into a lot of his interest in Kettering. His degrees go back to 1956, a BS degree in chemistry, and then a BA degree in management in 1978. So that's really something, accomplishment. A lot of work here with Kettering that he describes. He's a committed volunteer and historian involved in multiple Dayton community nonprofits, including Five Rivers Metro Parks, Woodland Cemetery, Dayton Carillon Park, the City of Dayton Landmark Committee. He's a trustee of Preservation Dayton, representing the Wright Dunbar neighborhood and working to highlight its historical significance. And he's currently authoring several books, including the C.F. Kettering Research Lab. He's got Ridgely Terrace, Yellow Springs and Beyond, 4.5 years, My Journey to 90, Our Companion Animals, Working with the Boss, and Cattle Drive, The View from a Bovine Family. This is a really diverse. I'm really in awe. So Chuck, go ahead, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, Chuck.
Well, I actually said my bio, about 2 pages of my bio, so, and you're going to have to pardon me. My voice is really going today. Can everyone hear now?
Yes.
Okay. Many, many, many years ago, well, a long, long time ago, I smoked a lot. And I don't know whether any of you here are smokers or not, but this is the end result of smoking a lot. But positively, I'm a 25-year survivor of throat cancer. So
Oh, right.
it was actually the worst thing to happen to a public speaker. I can't say a note, but for a public speaker. But anyway, I'm great, other than my voice box. And I normally try to do a microphone to make it better. So if anyone has any problems, I'll try to speak up. The talk today is kind of, since you are GM, salary GM retirees, it's a little bit different, and I borrow from some of my other talks, and I tried to make it more of an emphasis on the GM connection, the Dayton GM connection. I want to mention, if we have time on the back, I have laid out a lot of the stuff I've had from my history work. There are 2 3-ring binders full back there about Kettering. And there are 2 that are not, I've got 15 of those 3-ring binders about everything you could think of, that you could think of Kettering. It's amazing, man, because of course you know the history of him being at GM and before being at GM, but the thing about it, a lot of the stuff I have on there, he did after after he retired from GM. He retired in 1947 and did a whole lot of things after that retirement. Well, I'm running off the mouth again. Let me just see if I can get over here and get my pointer and we'll get started. I spent about 40 years running past. I have to tell jokes too. How many people here at work that know someone at right path? Oh my goodness, a lot of times I don't get to the end. And I have to say, because people say you worked at right path. I worked at right path for 40 years. And they say, well, were you in Air Force? And I say, no, I wasn't Air Force. I wasn't military. I wasn't civilian. I was a contractor, low man on the totem pole. But we did all the work. I always worry about telling that to a bunch of, but it was a great place. I tell you, other than working with Kettering, working in White Pat in every area there was amazing. I've been so lucky on the things I've done. The first job when I left Kettering, I have to tell you a story about that. I worked for Kettering the last 2 years of his life, and working with Kettering was amazing. I mean, to the extent of traveling on his executive plane. I'm 22 years old. I'm riding around with not by myself, the rest of the guys were there too. And but he died in 1958, and I lasted for another 4 years. But the first thing they did when they went out and hired a business agent, he may have been pretty good, but before when a problem came up, we went out and bought it, regardless of the price. Now, if you can get the business agent decided you could get it, doesn't matter what scientific interest was on it, you had to get his signature. Anyway, well, let me get started here. I put this together in the GM Dayton salary retires, and that's a young picture. That's a young picture of Kettering. Let's get started. Okay, then you can't start this picture of Delco and Kettering without talking about John Henry Patterson. John Patterson, of course, ran NCR. He ran NCR, and Deeds was his general manager. And about this time, in the 1900s, everything was going towards the horseless carriage or automobiles. And but so Deeds, quite the engineer and the tinkerer, actually built a car himself from a kit. But everything at that time was going to the horseless carriage and going to electric. And of course, I almost was old enough to crank a car, but I didn't. But you know, cranking was not only dangerous, it was difficult to do. And sometimes I have to wonder whether to stop and tell a joke or not. That's why these things run. And we might go over the 12 o'clock. I have to say, this is what I tell the people who come here about the self-starter. Before the self-starter, it was dangerous. Women couldn't do it. It was too difficult. If they wanted to go shopping or go somewhere, they had to get their husband, if they had one, or a relative to go out and start the old mom. Well, I won't say mom too, that's, but anyway, go out and start the car, but then, after the self-starter went out, well, they could start it, push a button, and they could go to Zillows. They no longer had to get their husband or a relative. But you know what a fellow said about that? The accident rate went sky high. That's a joke that my wife hates. She actually does all the driving. But anyway, to get back to the story of the self-starter, what they did, they worked at NCR during the day. When he didn't have time to electrify and run it, so he had a friend in Wild State. He called him and said, send me an engineer. And Kettering was just graduating, and so his friend went to Kettering and said, go down and talk to him at NCR. Kettering already had a job with a Central Ohio telephone company. And he was from Lymanville, way up north. He didn't want to go to Dayton. Well, he talked him into going to Dayton. He came down and talked to Deeds, and they clicked. They formed a lifelong friendship. They both were engineers. They both were tailors. And what they did, Deeds was interested in his automobile. He did, and in Dayton, there was over a dozen automobile manufacturers here. Well, Deeds said, there's a river of gold. I hope that term's right. But they didn't want to do a car, so they decided to make the car better. First, they made the ignition better. Then they finalized the self-starter, according to Kettering. Kettering was a genius, an actual genius. They actually finalized the self-starter, and they went to Cadillac, to Detroit to Cadillac, and the Cadillac loved it. They ordered 5,000, and we've got them here in the park. We've got two, I think, Steve, we had two of the Cadillacs,
Yes.
I think two of the 1912 Cadillacs. But that was the first, they ordered 5,000 starters. Well, the only thing Kettering and Deeds had was a place I'm quite familiar with, Deeds Barn. Deeds Barn is where I come every Tuesday. This is one of my volunteer days, believe it or not. It came just at the right time. From 9 to 1, I am here in Deeds Barn. And I won't do on this talk, but I have had, oh yes I will. We can go to lunch later. The reason I have to tell you this, I have to say this, my connection with Kettering, I don't remember I did on that more, but Deeds Barn is where I am every Tuesday. When I moved to Dayton from Yellow Springs in 1971, and I actually moved in, well, let's see, right here. That number is significant. I moved to Dayton to an apartment building at 319 Central. At the time, I wasn't aware that's where the bar had been. So anyway, and I kept that. I've got a lot of bills of things versus which Charles Johnson, 319 Central. And I won't go into all those, but those kind of significant things went on through my whole life of having a connection with Kettering. But anyway, the Deeds Barn is where it is. That's here in the park. It's actually a replica. We've also got the original, which is downstairs. And luckily, we have them both. We have a replica and we have the original. Okay, so what happened after they got this contract? They got a term contract for 5,000 stars, no company, and no factory. So they came up with the name Delco, Dayton Engineering Laboratories Company, and they rented space in the Beaver Power Building. That's downtown. If you were familiar with Dayton, you're familiar with that building. It's the Beaver Power Building. Frank Beaver built it. They first rented the first floor, the second floor in about a year and a half. They had rented the whole building. And they had rented that whole building. They needed another building. And I won't go into the actual money. They went from just a few fellows inside of 2 years. I think they brought over 2,000 employees. Well, that's a Beaver Power Building number 2. When they went back to Fred Beaver, they said we need another building. And one thing about that, when he built that building, it was only 4 stories. They ran through those whole floors, those 4 floors, and they put in addition 2 more stories on it. Now, that building is still here. That building now is actually, you might be familiar with it, is actually Delco Lofts down by the ballpark. That was Delco building number 1. And of course, this is after they, well, I might be wrong about that, I won't say that right now, but that's the building, that's the Delco Lofts, and that was Delco number 1. And now we go to this. We're talking here of Deeds and Kettering. They started working, they invented the new ignition system in around 1908. In 1910, they worked on the self-starter. In 1912, they actually invented the self-starter. But what about William C. Durant? Now we switched to Detroit and Michigan. At the same time that all this was going on in Dayton about automobiles, automobile things were going on in Detroit and Flint, Michigan. I have to tell you, I always say no one knows who this thing is. I was talking to a group of people, there must have been 60 or 70 people, and I was going to really full, I'm talking about Kettering. I said, who in the room knows who William C. Durant is? No one raised their hand, but one guy in the back raised his hand. I didn't ask him why, but after the thing I said, how did you know William C. Durant? He said, I'm from Flint. so he sort of knew Durant. But Durant was an amazing man in himself. He was called the dreamer. He did so, I can't go into the details of all the things he did for the purpose of this talk. I am going to put together another talk which goes into detail because the actual way that General Motors actually became what it was, fantastic story. But too involved for me to tell you here, but the number of times people went backwards and forwards. But during William C. Durant was the beginning of it. Okay. There, United Motors. He started United Motors because all the other car companies there. He started parts companies. He started, and I bought this thing the other day. Being a retired engineer. I am a retired engineer. I retired in 2001, and I tell anyone now, don't ask me anything about IT. I have no idea about IT now. It's like being a dinosaur. But anyway, well, that's the story of why I'm using this. I don't know whether you know or not, the regular, like this thing I'm using here, it doesn't show up. And I went through, I won't tell you how much I went through money and when people try, it just doesn't work. But this is okay. Now you get the idea. He started United Manufacturing Company, Jackson Steel, Ohio. All of these are automobile parts companies. And he decided in his mind, he put all these parts companies together because of all the other companies with cars. One of the things he did, you might recognize Harrison Radio Corporation that was here, Randy Electric Company, Bearing Service Company was another one, but there was a secret. The president of that was Alfred P. Sloan, which was shown up later on. And then, of course, along with this, he had already built Dayton Engineering Laboratories Company in 1916. And the idea on this, all of this went on between 1904 and 1919 when GM bought it. So all of this was going on in Detroit at the same time all of this was going on here in Dayton. I had a slide, I didn't finish it, but I made a slide that was like a tree. The branches going on the left-hand side all did what Dayton was doing on the right-hand side. It all did what GM did. And when they got Dayton Engineering Laboratories Company, they got Kettering. That's kind of a gold coin somewhere. But they got Kettering also at the very end when GM bought United Motors. And what they did is when they bought that, United Motors purchased Delco products in 2016. And of course, Delco had started around 2011, 2012. General Motors then purchased United Motor Service. You see how all these are branching together. And they got, for the several automobile brands they had, they bought the parts companies. And you guys who were GM, you know about all the different brands in and out that GM did over a period of time. They were continually merging stuff, bringing in new stuff, buying stuff. But that purchase that they did in 1919, they bought them Dayton Engineering Laboratories. They got Kettering, and subsequently in 1920, Kettering was appointed GM's vice president of research. He went there in 1920, and he stayed there his whole time, to 1947. He retired in 1947 from GM, still VP of research. And what happened during that particular time, I'm not going to go into that. There's so many variations of what Kettering did to affect GM. I don't know if I got that here or not. Let's see if I got it. Oh, now that's the building they give him. That's General Motors Research in Detroit, Michigan. Kettering was. Do I dance still? Well, I'll tell you the story. I hate iPhones. Not because I hate my iPhone. Because I don't know how to run it. Funny story. I have to tell you another funny story. And I don't upgrade things. You know, I'm still, well, this is an i13. How far am I now? 40? But my wife is an iPhone expert. She could do everything with an iPhone. You know, but myself, it's what she did the other day, and I don't upgrade things. She said, you need to upgrade. So the other day, she took my phone, she upgraded it, now I can't remember it all. It was entirely different. Anyway, but they research all of the things that you know that GM did over the years. A lot of that was Kettering. Freon. Kettering was Freon. Kettering was the quick drying lacquer. Kettering was, believe it or not, I have one. The 1941 Oldsmobile. High chromatic. Kettering wasn't responsible for that. And, you know, he wasn't responsible directly, but he had lots of people working for him, but the brain power came from Kettering. I know because I experienced it, definitely. Okay, now here, I'll go back to this crazy pointer. I showed you Delco Plant 1. That was in 1915, I think they built that. But then they were just with GM, they were expanding. They were going up to 15,000, 20,000 people. That's the Delco Lofts. That's plant number 1. They filled that up, and that's the original 4 stores and the 2 stores. Then they went to plant number 2. This is plant number 2, and it's called the Delco. This was Delco Lofts. This is called the Delco. And I love that GM kept that name Delco. I mean, from the very beginning, they kept it a brand name. And so, but this is now, this was plant number 2. It's the Delco. Pretty something name anyway. This was plant number 3. Now look at the size of these buildings from GM in Dayton, Ohio. And they're in Detroit. And I can't go through all the different parts. I've got some information on it. It's complicated because they would change parts from one plant to another. You guys know that. It would depend on what they decided. They would change parts, they would merge parts. I can't go through all of it, but this is just here. Now, let me see, yeah, this, by the way, was torn down. That's where Dragon Stadium is. And even before Dragon Stadium, it used to be the parking lot. Who's going to answer a question for me right now? This was a parking lot for not Delco, but another building here. Does anyone know who that building was? What number two became? Where?
Mendelssohn's?
Right. How many people ever went to Mendelssohn? I spent many dollars there.
There's a great floor in there.
You remember the black lady there who took you on to? Yes. A great place, great. Not now, but I used to be a radio amateur. I loved that place. I could get anything I wanted there. But yes, that was a parking lot for Mendelssohn, which was right there. Now, let's see. What can you do with that? Oh, I forgot. There's more to GM. General Motors in Dayton. Over the years, GM constructed many plants in Dayton, including Delco Moraine. Any Delco Moraine retired? Wow. Okay. I have to mention, well, and then of course Harrison Radiator. Any Harrison Radiator big here? But they did have a plant here, didn't they? Yes. And then Frigidaire. But these were acquisitions. They didn't start out with them. They took them and ran with them. And several other plants. I can't name them all the plants here. I want to put something together, another talk together, and I want to go out to the sites where they are now. Now, that's the way things change, but you go to the sites, these huge parking lots are all available to these now. Some of them have been rebuilt, but most of them are just acres and acres of concrete. But just think back in the heyday, in the 1950s, when I graduated from high school, all the guys I graduated with, they went to Dayton. Somewhere. I don't know how many names I heard. Frigidaire, Harrison, they came to Dayton for a job. Great jobs. Let's see. Now, anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, I skipped over that slide. Here's this again. This is what I wanted to get to. This is plant number 2. It was Mendelssohn's. Mendelssohn was here for many years. And there he is. I knew Sandy quite well. Sandy Mendelssohn. He was here for a long, long time and would sell anything. What was it? The first place to find anything. I think that was at the moment. But anyway, and I remember that, of course, he had some ill health and he was retiring. And then after he retired, he had all these sales. He had sales all the time. And then at the end, this was his last day, they had the end, the sad day, Mendelssohn was in. And I got this picture actually myself. But was it the end? No, Delco. And the company, when that building, the company got it, Crawford Hoying was a contractor. They came in and completely redid Mendelssohn building. It was one of the largest building contracts in years in Dayton. But there it was, the Delco, and it's still there. It's beautiful. It's kind of like what you would say on reuse of old buildings rather than demolishing them and tearing them down. The Delco, but something else. I'm getting ready to do question and answers, but let's do something else. Something historically significant. Oh, the CFK Research Laboratory in Hill Springs, Ohio. The building is still there. For years, it was WISO. I understand now it's being rebuilt or redone too into apartments. But this was where I worked. When I worked there, I went there as my office. This was the electronics lab right down here. I was running that building for 6 years, I guess. And, but the whole thing, now Bill, this was built in 1952. In 1952 was when this, and it was built to do Kettering's personal work, the things he was interested in, built with his own money. And that's what he did on the building with his money. But anyway, that's where I worked, and that, I stayed there, as I said before, until 1963. Okay, and ours were, that's what was going on in that building. Photosynthesis, renewable energy, that's wind research, cancer research. I worked on all those projects. And magnetics research, I worked on that, not many people know, but he had that laboratory in Yellow Springs. And he also got another laboratory, not as big as that one, but a one-frame building to study magnetics research. And he built it right where Northie Lane Market is now. Of course, that was on cornfields back then. It was a one-story frame building to do magnetics research. And I worked on that project. I worked on that project first in the building on a workbench, and then a larger thing, and then a larger thing. Then he built a whole building. That's another story. I won't even go into that. That's a whole story in itself. Kettering and magnetics research. Okay, here we go. Now, right there. Wow, I wish they had a formula relation and all that together. That is a windmill. In 1957, Kettering was doing wind research. In that, he had a windmill mounted on that, and a 32-volt transformer ran down in the building into a whole series of batteries and lights, which would charge the battery. And that's, he was doing wind research in 1957. And he would record how much power he was getting from the wind. I always thought that was interesting. Here's the guy that invented the Delco light path, the portable, that he got from gasoline. But now, after inventing that, he's looking for wind research. What can you get from wind? And what do we have now? Everyone talks about wind research now. Okay. Well, those are the blades from the windmill. Those are the blades from the windmill. You got it. I'm coming to it. Those are the blades from the windmill. After Kettering died, in a few years, they took the windmill down because there was no one there. Anyway, so they didn't win at that time. They took the windmill down, and a collector in Yellow Springs, his name's Dave Hughes, which is deceased now. He collected, he took it, and he bought it up. He's a collector, he had everything. And through a source, I found out that he had that windmill. So I finally talked to him, and I got him. I had that windmill. It's in my garage. It's a Kettering artifact. Of course, it's a Kettering artifact. And I have it, and one of my projects is to restore. I bought all the parts to put it back together. To put it back together, renew it, and do something with it. And it's something that Kettering worked on himself. And it's an instance of wind research. Wow. And again, the Delco. That's my idea. I checked it out. How would that be, that restored windmill right here, right over, that's still there. Restoring that windmill, put it on there, put Kettering's name on it, been down there and take pictures. You can see it all over downtown. What do you think about that idea? Yes. To restore the windmill. That is option one. Okay, if I can't get it there, option two, I'm going to talk to the curator back there. And you know, it's not free, it will take a lot of money, but I'm going to talk to Steve. Don't you want that for Carolina Park? I mean, this is what I want. But what do you think about it being somewhere in Carolina Park? I don't know. put it back on the building in Yellow Springs. Now, how I do this, I've got all this information I've got the original generator. Interesting enough, when I got the original generator, it had to be moved with a forklift. It's a big monster. And, but anyway, that's one of my projects I'm interested in, is restoring, and it's actually in my garage now. There again, I have to go back to my She likes history, but not the detail. Okay. Oh, and that's a rendition. That's a rendition. The vision of the restored Kettering windmill, that's part of my proposal to do it. Okay. Now we're gonna go. Who knows what this is? Anyone here? Are you from Flint?
Yes.
You're kidding, are you?
Oh, I really am.
Well, you know what this is then.
Sure.
Well, you tell them what it is.
I want to steal your show. You're probably.
Okay, this is another Kettering object. And I have to tell you right now, there were 12 of these buses. There were 12 of these buses. GM and Kettering put them out to go all over the country and tell them what GM was doing. Because at that time, in the 1950s, GM was doing a lot of amazing things. And they put these 12 buses together. It doesn't show his, but there are exhibits on the inside, and the bus opened up, and they go in the fairgrounds of places, and be there for a few days, and people could come in and see what GM was doing. This is what the future like. There are about 4 of them left, and one of them, this is me, by the way, in a slimmer individual, but that's me. I got a chance to ride in it when it was here at Concourse Elements years ago. But that's me, and I got a chance to ride in it. I got slides of me in it riding. It was, but there are 12 of them, there are about 4 of them left. And so that's one of the projects. I've already talked. It's at Atlas. It had the auto truck and show up in Auburn, Indiana. I've already talked to them and priced out what it would take to get it here. It would be between 5 and 10,000 a day. Because it doesn't ride, it has to travel in a trailer. And then there's a whole crew of people that come with it. But I've already priced it out. It's 5,000 for a day. And depending on how it goes, up to 10,000. You get those figures, Steve? Okay, but it's 5,000. And seriously, that's one of my projects this year. I want to get his birthday next year is August 29th. That was his birthday. I would like to get it here definitely for his birthday. If not, then get it here for Concourse Elements. How many have been to Concourse Elements? You have been? Yes, Concourse Elements. You've been. Well, it was at Concourse Elements when it was here. And of course, these are all the facts that I've talked to them. So I'm going to be pushing this to different individuals about the $5,000. And since it's a GM-related thing, I know you people will. I know you people will start to go over me first. I do have fun with these. That's why they go slow. Okay, what next? Okay, Boss, I'm going to do a little reading here if you don't mind. Boss Kett A, I'll never forget. This is fact. Charlie, he called me Charlie. He said, hold this wire while I solder, and when I go to join to cool it, don't let go. I don't even know if they even make solder anymore. Can you buy solder? But that bundle wasn't just about circuitry, it was about trust, teamwork, and a kind of mentorship you never forget. And the idea about teamwork and mentorship, of him being a mentor, you know, there are a lot of great people type laboratory lasted until 1988 when it closed. That's when the research part of it closed. Do you know it closed in 1988? The people who were working there, a lot of them are gone now, but the people who worked there during that time, they had a picnic every day. They had the Kettering picnic, the picnic that will never end. And it's still the Kettering picnic. They call it they meet over in the county somewhere. But they're still, and that's what gets me working at Kettering must have been pleased to continue to do, and they do other things, you know, it's not just all Kettering. But the fact is the whole group got together, working for Kettering, and the people who followed it. I'll tell you a little bit of story as a historian. My boss, his name was Bill Treehart. And the joke comes up. Well, I have to tell you about Treehart. Treehart was chief engineer. I worked underneath him. He was my boss, great guy. In my history activities, I have located his sons who were teenagers at that time, remember Kettering, and remember going into it. And I was able to, by research, find them. I've talked to both of them. They live different places. They're all professional. But what happened is when Treehart, he went, well, Kettering stopped and made it back in 1952. Treehart was lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he drove the Ford. And he drove up to Wednesday Towers where Kettering talked to him in the driveway. And after they talked, they agreed. And at the end of the Treehart said, well, I guess you're not going to hire me because I'm driving a Ford. And Kettering said, and this is documented in some of the biographies, Kettering said, now I'm going to hire you, but I'm going to question your judgment. That was the kind of man. That's what he was. Okay, I may be able to finish this, but because this is important, on the bench with the boss, I remember Kettering me at the bench, solving one of his written word classes, and he would come on the weekend when the place was closed. I lived right behind it. I didn't know, and I actually would be working with him on the project. But he would say that, he would say, hold it there, while he would blow on it. But hey, as old as I am, I can say that. At 82, it was mostly liquid, but anyway, it included some. Every circuit, going back where we are now, every circuit was built by hand, resistance, capacitors, integrated circuits. That moment captured the bridge between the world of filaments and the world of silicon. A time when standing at the same bench, surrounded by computers, artificial intelligence and microchips, 1,000 times more powerful. What would he say? He would say, what could he do for people? And I believe he'd do exactly what he always did. Look past the technology and ask, how can this make life better for people? Well, we're getting close to the end. Okay, this is just a little review. I worked directly with Stephen Kettering at the Research Lab, 1957, 1958. I'm probably one of the few living individuals to share personal lab experience with me. I have continued working with the innovations and institutions he built. And that's my legacy. As I mentioned, a Kettering windmill restoration in downtown exhibit planning. I'm writing a book. I've been writing it for years, documenting my time with Kettering. I do speaking engagements to keep the story alive. Pray that progress thus here for CFK's birthday. And I'm really working on planning for a 150th birthday celebration in 2026. that when I talk about I'm working, I'm talking to many different groups. There may be other people doing that, but I'm making it a personal campaign of mine to get as much going for Kettering as possible. I'm starting now. I'm starting early. And let's see if there's any more of this. But anyway, I'm going to talk to Kettering. They should be interested. I'm going to talk to City of Dayton. I'm on the Landmarks Committee. I've got a lot of comments there. But then I'm going to be talking to all the big money people. And I didn't say Steve. I'm talking to all the big money people to see what we can do and put it together. Let's see. Okay, these are all books, good books about Kettering. There are 5 books, all these biographies, I've read every one of them. They're all good. They're all good. A lot of the stuff that I talk about were in these biographies. I've been working on mine for over 10 years. I talk a lot, but I don't write very well. But that book, I do have to finish the book. The title of that one book is Grizzly Terrace, where he lived. And one of my talk goes into all he had a laboratory in his basement. Laboratory, 40 people working in his basement, going up to Grizzly Terrace every day. That's why he built the land in Yellow Springs, the Grizzly Terrace. What says Grizzly Terrace, Yellow Springs, and beyond. And the beyond is my boss, Richard William Treon, Richard William Treon. After he left Kettering, all the stuff he had, got 11 patents on his own. That's based on stuff he got in Kettering. Now, he kept working with the laboratory. He didn't leave like I did. He kept working until 1988. He retired from the Kettering Foundation. Okay, now, questions and answers. And I'm sorry that all of you people, I know all of you know what QR codes are. Do you? The younger people say yes. Well, I'm still writing things out. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't go anywhere. Oh, one last joke. One last joke. I swear to God, this just happened last week. And it's got to do with technology. I'm retirement. From the University of California, by the way, that was large. But it goes back to the same. And Steve had worked with me. I was looking for a plumber. So I went to Best Buy. The marvelous plumber. And then they had this deal. Or if you got a car, a credit card, they all do this. You get a 10% discount. It wasn't that much. What's that? Okay, 10% discount on buying this plumber. So, but anyway, I had to put stuff in the computer. Then, to confront me, and then the clerk on the phone, I had to talk to the people, the credit people on the phone. Oh, I get on the phone, I get my name and everything. And it just says, well, I'll have to text you to get a confirmation on your phone. And I said, what? I said, can I just tell you? And she said, no, I'm going to have to text you. I said, forget it. And I've gone through this whole business. I've gone through this whole business. Forget it. Just forget the whole thing. I'm not kidding you when I say I don't like it. Texting, I don't text. And that's getting me in a lot of problems. No one does any. Oh, and you know, young people, if I ever email you, well, maybe Frank might know. When I email you, I write a book. And you can't text a book. Anyway, at last we're done. You can email me at any time. You can ask any questions right now about Kettering. Yes. The man from Flint. Wasn't that a movie or something?
How bad was his eyesight? Did you have any experience with his eyesight? How bad was his eyesight?
Big, big lasers.
I mean, like I read where he had to have a book up in front of his nose. And
Breadboards, he would be right down. Yes, his eyesight was bad. I think it was from birth. I don't think he had an injury, but big, but he didn't have any trouble getting around, and he did stuff. At that time, he had most of the workers to do the actual work. But yes, he didn't have bad eyesight. But wonderful sense of humor. Let me tell you something else, personality-wise, that I've always been impressed with. Working in the laboratory, of course, he didn't work there every day. He actually wintered in Florida. He would come back around April and leave again in October. But while he was there, he would come in sometimes on the weekend. And of course, he didn't drive, he had a chauffeur.
because he couldn't see.
Well, I don't know why I'm saying
Yeah, I
that.
think he couldn't see to drive, right?
I can imagine that might be. That might be. But he always drove a Chevy Bel Air. They would send him a Cadillac. He would send him back. Now, of course, he didn't drive. His chauffeur, poor guy, drove a Chevy Bel Air. And tell me how true that is. I had occasion that in his estate papers, in his estate, when he died, in his estate, it said 2 Chevy Bel Airs, no Cadillacs. I'm sure there were Cadillacs somewhere, but he did. He sent, and I think he sent them back on purpose. 2 last things. Goodness. My wife will wash my hands. But in 2 last things, the one thing I was going to tell you is about Kettering, working in Kettering, and he would come in and bring some people. He was always bringing people to do this to tour, and scientists and different things. And going in the back door, if I happened to be around, the laboratory had a gentleman deceased now, a black custodian, who was the chief custodian for the laboratory. Kettering would be coming in, walking in the door, and if the custodian happened to be there, his name was William. He said, "Hey, William." He would stop with the tour, stop and talk to the custodian. "How's your wife doing? She's still sick." He knew everything about it. But it just got me. He would stop and talk to a minority at that period of time. That was in the 50s. That always impressed me. The last thing that impresses me, in my research when I went to Wright State, all of the papers were there. 134 boxes of Kettering papers. I think I've been through most of them. But his estate was valued at $200 million in 1958. Now you do the math on that. And to give you a comparison, Leeds was a millionaire also. His estate was valued at $15 million. Now those two work together as close as you can. Kettering's was $200 million. Dean's was $15 million. Now, I know why that is. You can't spend 20 years as a vice president of the GM making a few bucks, and that's what it was. And I'm sure he got all kinds of benefits from being vice president. But that's a fact. 200 million, that would make him one of our good investors. Any other questions?
Got a question over here, Chuck.
Anyone else? Oh, yes.
Is this one of your windmill blades against the wall?
Oh. Oh, my mind is going. Anyway, I've done this so many times. I've got the whole thing. I told you about the windmill. That's why I brought this here. To prove this is one of the blades. The other 6 blades are in my garage, taking up space from my wife's car. But yes, this is actually, it's actually one of the blades. I've got all the blades, they're stacked up in my garage. I actually, and I did a talk at the Bellbrook History. They had a history thing this summer, and I took the whole window. I put all three of them because I didn't take the actual journal, but I put all the blades together and I took the whole thing. And so, I'm glad I didn't do that today. It's raining out there. Yes.
Do you remember what he was doing with magnets?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. He started that research on magnetism in 1930. He hired a gentleman called G. Clark Gifford to study magnetism. There are actually 11 scientific papers on there. They actually proved the Einstein effect. I can't remember the exact name of it. But yes, he was interested in magnetism his whole career. And to the extent he built this laboratory with other workers to study the magnetism more of what they were doing, that was so scientifically interesting. That whole building was torn down in 1963 or 64 and shipped to Oakland University. Oakland University continued. That's another part of what we're talking about. They continued that for a number of years, and unfortunately, it was called the Kettering Magnetic Lab. The guy doing the work died, and they tore it down, which at that time I was interested in getting that back here. And, but they tore it down when they didn't have money to do it. They said it would take about $200,000 for something that Kettering built himself with all the equipment. They couldn't come up with the $200,000. That's another thing I do. All these, I keep telling my wife, I'm going back to work so I can get some rest.
Yes.
I enjoy doing this, so I enjoy doing this. And for me, myself, that's one of the books I'm writing. It's called Forward. People ask me all the time, how old are you? People say, how in the world did you know Kettering? He died in 1958. He's a child prodigy right out of Kettering. What was I going to do? Anyway, what was the question? Oh, magnetism. Oh, yes. They took it up to, and then they tore it down. And something else new, bits and pieces of history. He was quite active at Kettering Hospital, of course, before it was built, before he died. There was a museum, a magnetic museum in the basement of Kettering Hospital, and I traced it, and then they had taken it all out for some renovations, and it was in the warehouse or something. Yes, I lost track of it there. He got a medal, but their work was kind of his initial work in MRIs. A lot of that went on to, of course, that was after he died. That work on MRIs started with Kettering. Okay, well, what time is it anyway?
About 5 after noon.
I didn't miss it too far, did I? But anyway, thanks all of you for coming.
On behalf of the GM Dayton retirees, that's the first installment of a multi-million-dollar.
We'll put your name on one of the plaques.
Maybe the bus or something.
Thank you so much.
I hope you can join us. I hope most of you can go down to Culp's with us and we can ask some more questions of Chuck.
Okay, they're all set up for you. Oh, I have all of these things. My mind is not a computer. the data set is getting warped. But what I wanted to say, another talk I'm doing, the time after I left Kettering, and it really helped me, I got a job with the Jet General Corporation, and for the next 14 years, I worked with the base on NASA doing space stuff. I did working papers on putting stuff in Apollo space program. I became quite familiar with Apollo, with all of that. We worked directly with NASA. And in my mind, I got that job simply because I had a little Kettering in that middle. I said to them, and that's what we did. There was a lot of equipment not available. We built a whole lot of equipment. And that's what that was, instrumentation for environmental. Another story.
All right, Chuck, thank you.
Thank you so much. Frank, all the cops and that's all set up.